Well, welcome everyone to
PyRVA.
PyRVA.
Wow, and I
Wow,
can't
and I
hear
can't hear
myself while I'm
myself while I'm
speaking.
speaking.
That'll be better. My name is Chris May, one of the organizers of PyRVA, and we just got somebody else coming in, so that's excellent. Hey, welcome. Um, welcome. Tonight we're going to listen to Adam as he tells us to how to set ourselves up for success with our jobs. But I also want to just take a moment and, well, first, thank you all for being here. I just came back from DjangoCon a couple of weeks ago, as a couple other people here have. And I just had a real kind of, it's been a while since I've been to a Python conference, and I forget like how incredible the community is. And I just really appreciate, number one, you all coming out here tonight to kind of build a sense of community. But also thought, we have a little thing up above. I think everybody got retrospective cards, notes, yeah, post-it notes. Um, Essentially, at the end of the talk, like if you have any thoughts about the talk, like what you've learned, things about ways we can improve the community, I'd love if during the talk or during the meeting you just write down notes, your observations, because we all have a different point of view, and I'd love to kind of capture that. And you online as well. I guess the online people can't see me pointing at them since it's just this slide. Oh, they can. Okay. Um, Write them in the chat or whatever way you feel comfortable, because I'd love to like make a better sense of community. I'd love to give feedback to our speaker, and I'd love to improve PyRVA. Also, speaking of community, conferences are pretty incredible, and PyCon US just announced this in the last couple of weeks that their 2024 dates are going to be towards the middle of May, and they're going to be in Pittsburgh this year. So I imagine a number of us will be able to go, and so I wanted to put that seed in your mind to think, like, if you could talk to your boss, especially towards the end of the year, they'll like to know how to allocate budget for the next year. It'd be cool if a big group of us could go up there. But I know Dakota was mentioning, there he is, that there's a lot of conferences within like a 2 to 3 hour radius. So I'd love to, if you know of any, I would love to announce it here, just because I was surprised at how recharged I got just from going to DjangoCon, and I've seen a lot of vigorous agreement in there. Um, with that, I think I'll hand it over to Adam. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. I've seen most of your faces before, so is there anybody new to PyRVA? Nope.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
relatively new.
Okay.
Here in 2020.
Okay. Cool. Welcome. Um, just to gauge like Python experience, does anyone have like less than a year of Python experience? Okay. Less than 5 years? Okay. Cool. Just gauging thing. So I'm gonna start off by talking about like more mindset stuff and then go into some Python coding. Yeah. So about me, graduated in 2011 with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. And two of the things that I attribute my success with while at past success in my job history is these two things that I did while I was in college. And one of these, the ACM programming team, was kind of reminds me of PyRVA as it is today. I joined it and we got together every Friday and we worked on programming problems, just like the types of programming challenges you'd see in a competition or advent of code preview. And from that group, I met another developer who was interested in iPhone development. And in 2011, this was like around the years when App Store was kind of big. And it's kind of saturated past a certain point in time, it's saturated, and then it wasn't sort of as fun to work on it. But the iPhone was still new. It was still like, oh, I could go online, I could learn about all the things. I could take a Stanford course and learn all about iPhone development and then do it. So I ended up writing a little game for iPhone and starting an iPhone development club with one of my friends from the programming team. So those are like two big things. And you notice that neither of those are a class. So I kind of like, I can talk about like, oh, I learned so much from my classes, but when I talk about the things that I attribute my success to, they are the community that I made in college. Okay. So my first job out of school was as an iOS developer. And I got this job because I wrote that iPhone app, and then my sister showed it to someone that knew the CEO, and that's how I got that interview. So that's kind of like, it feels a little like luck, you know, a little circumstantial. But there's some things there, like I didn't just get lucky because I wrote an iPhone app. I put in work. I joined a development team. I found a friend that wanted to do iPhone development. Then I put in a lot of work to learn iPhone development, made that app. And even though that app wasn't successful, I opened myself up to the possibility of luck. After that, one of my friends that was in the programming team was working at a company. I joined him to do C++. And then I transitioned over shortly after to do Ruby development, which I had taught myself Ruby. And this was also the person that I started the iPhone development club with. I went to the company with him. So very early on, those two things that I did in college are paying off with the network I made there. And then in 2014, I transitioned to doing Java, Python, and AWS, which is more things. Like Python, I taught myself Python. AWS, Alfred back there encouraged me to pursue a cert, and I did AWS and learned that on my own time. And now I dropped Java. And yeah, so this is not normal, but I've had 9 employers over 13 years of being a software developer. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. And this is the high level of that journey. So what I'm going to talk about here is a term that I heard on a podcast recently, which I really liked, luck surface area. And I put the dice here because I'm not necessarily going to say that luck is like, I feel like luck is more of a probability than an actual term of like, oh, it's like, there's a chance that you'll get something. So, like, although there's a chance that I'll get this job, but I can increase my surface area and certain factors by doing things. Where are my notes? Is there like a note thing? There we go. So one of the things that you can do is always be learning, and things like, okay, well, you can read books, you know, read self-help books or technical documentation. Teach yourself how to program in different languages, attend events, mentor, find stuff to practice, and teach others is a big one that is very important. I think that teaching people something technical makes you learn it a lot better. So I've had a couple of instances where I have been in a teacher role, and being able to do that gives you like an extra pressure of learning it yourself and learning it well. So yeah, and this is sort of the dice thing. If you're not aware of like Dungeons and Dragons, the plus modifier, you roll like a d20 and then you say like plus knowledge is like, if it's a +2, then you're only ever going to roll the lowest of 3. So just like, okay, the more things you have, the higher your luck will be in things you're trying to do with that. Second one, health is big. You know, like having the mental focus to do things. If you're not exercising, sleeping, and eating right, like that can quickly deteriorate how you're going to be able to do anything at all. So not just mental work, but it's important to keep your health up. Money. This one's a big one. If you don't build healthy money habits, this can like quickly spiral on you. There's a lot of pressure around money to affect you in negative ways or in positive ways. And if you don't have the expected, you have like an unexpected expense and you can't handle it, then that pressures you to do certain things. And you can't leave your job if you're like, oh, well, I'm right up against the wall on my finances. I can't leave my job if I don't like it. And if I lose my job, I'm going to take whatever the next thing is that is available to me when I lose that job. I had that, the first job that I had when I started doing that C++ with a friend, that was because I lost the previous job, and I just ended up taking a C++ role. If I had more time to think about it, I probably wouldn't have made that career choice, but it was like, well, I'm not making money now. I'm going to pay my rent, so I'm going to go get another job. So building those happiness, building those healthy money habits, educating yourself on how to invest, making sure that you spend within your means. It's important for lots of things, but definitely in your career you can help by controlling your path, by having enough money to be like, you know, what job? You know, like, screw you, I'm leaving, and then I'm going to do something else because I don't like what you're doing here. Probably don't have to do it very often, but it's nice to have the option. Relationships. So there's this phrase that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time around. So it's important that you find people that are on a similar trajectory as you are. You don't necessarily want to spend all your time. If you want to have a healthy career as a software developer or whatever, you want to find other people that are on that same path, or people that have been there before you. Because if you just spend some time with people that are not on that path, not necessarily bad all the time, but if you don't have that group of people, that support network, then you don't have that balance of being like, oh, well, this person, I'm studying this thing and I'm learning this tool, or you don't have them to feed off of, and then you just feel like alone in that environment. And plus, having the network leads to more opportunities. So thanks for coming out. So here's sort of the big one here is if we think of this knowledge, relationship, and money and health as attributes, we can spend our attention, and I'm using the word attention here because time is not attention. Time is just a thing that moves on. The attention is like your finite resource that you get each day. And there's distractions for you. There's stuff competing for your attention all the time. And being able to spend your time, spend your attention on these things has a sort of compounding effect on that. So here's things that are competing for your attention now is worse than ever. Just think that the average in the United States for people using their phone is like 4 hours, and TV is similar to 4 hours. There's a sort of a social construct that everyone's going to reply to messages on Slack instantly, they're going to pick up their email and reply instantly, and it's self-perpetuating, because if you do it once, then people will expect it the next time. So it's good to reconsider the defaults that we've set in our life. Like, well, do I have notifications on all the time on my phone? What do I do when I wake up? What do I do when I open up my computer? You know, like, think about those defaults. And think about the things that you can remove from your life. To say no to simplify, to basically ruthlessly cut things from your life that are not adding value. News is one of these things where you can't control. You don't have any control over the thing that's happening in that news, but you look at it and then you get angry or you get other feelings or whatever. But not that you shouldn't be looking at news, but maybe you shouldn't be looking at it every day. So just another one of those things where it's important to think about how much distraction you're letting in, because the amount of attention you can give to those other things is limited by whatever your defaults are already. So this is 80-20, perfection is the enemy of good, is a concept that one of my bosses continually talked about all the time. And it's sort of like just been stuck in my head ever since. And I think about it almost all the time for everything. So it's 80% of the results are driven by 20% of the inputs. And what that really means is that kind of like 20% of the stuff is only 20% of the stuff is worth doing. It's because then the rest of it is diminishing returns, and there's so many things, so many small tasks in your life that if you didn't do it, would it be a problem? And that's also why focusing on the critical tasks first is sort of like what you want to do. The methodology of like eat the frog or whatever. If you're going to eat a frog, eat the biggest one first or something like that. But this has helped in a lot of ways. We were focusing on like errors in a system. You can look at like, oh, what's the top 80% of the errors, and then like look at where they're coming from in the system, and then pick off those critical bugs, or where are 80% of my costs, and just ignore the 20%. But I think that these things sometimes the 20% is in your face, and you're want to optimize it even though it's not worth it, right? Like streaming services, for example. I watch Netflix. I see articles like saying, okay, well, like Netflix prices increased by $1. And you're like, well, does it matter to me? Because my mortgage is this much and my Netflix is this much. It's like, it's not even worth my mental energy to be like, oh, this value I get from this is on that 20% of my costs. So like, should I be spending my time on that? It's money, but it may not be a critical thing that you should be focusing on. Anyway, going back to why we're here for Python. Python's another area where we can increase our Lux surface area. And this is a recent book that I read. It says, practice isn't the thing you do to get good, it's the thing that makes you good. So going back to my career journey, I did a lot of stuff outside of work. I learned Ruby, I learned AWS, I did all that stuff outside of work, and you guys are all here in the evening, spending your free time to learn stuff. So you're all aware of that. But this is what I attribute to being where I am today, is spending my free time on learning stuff. And it's kind of like I would interview people for software development jobs, and I would ask them, like, what kind of projects have you done for fun, you know? And a lot of people are just like, oh, I don't do it for fun, I just do it as a job. And I'm just like, well, like, yeah, but it's kind of fun also to keep learning and to have, and to get better, and yeah. And how are you going to be good if you don't do it outside of work? So there's practice, and then there's this phrase that people call deliberate practice, which is more focused on specific goals and repetition and incremental improvement. This is like watching your replays. If you ever play a video game and you're like, oh, let me go back and like watch the replay of the game and see what happened, you know, like doing that as you're doing software development, you know, looking at what you're doing and continuously trying to improve it. Just sort of like the refactoring stuff that we've done here at RVA. All right, so here we're getting to what I want people to actually do in this talk. So every year in December, since 2015, there's been a programming competition, and it is Advent of Code. So first 25 days of December, there's a problem each day, and they increase in difficulty. There are 2 parts, and we are going to do a giveaway for people that participate in completing the first 10 days. We'll see if people can complete the first 10 days. If the majority of people only get to like day 5 or something, we might adjust. Based on that, I was doing a lot of these problems, but then I got a job and then realized that I haven't been able to work on them at all. So we'll see if 10 days is the right number, but I hope that people will participate in this process. We will have a forum and try to share our solutions and stuff for it. And yeah, so please participate. There's information on our Discord on how to join this group. There's the code right there. I'll share these slides out after. And right now, I think it's only about 4 of us that are in there. But I hope that more of you guys will join it. Here's a reading list. A number of self-help books that I've read over the last couple of years that I thought were particularly impactful. Outliers talked about success and what makes people successful, and was talking a lot about how success is brought to by environment. And it was one of the examples in there was Bill Gates, and how Bill Gates became such a good programmer before his time because he had access to a computer before anyone else, but also he put in the hard work of sitting in front of that computer for hours and hours and hours. In Make Time has a lot of good suggestions for how to fight distraction. Bullet journal is good for just keeping track of and organizing. Chris and Brian both advocate this bullet journal. It's also a great way of keeping track of what you're doing at work and making sure that you are remembering what you're doing so you can communicate that back to your bosses. Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. This one's a great one if you don't know anything about investing. And Your Money or Your Life is another similar one where those 2 books are fantastic intros to like the financial independence movement, basically. Atomic Habits by James Clear is a great, like, just in general book about improving your habits and theories and stuff around habit formation and environment design. Never Split the Difference is another good book about negotiating. The author of this, Chris Voss, used to be like an FBI or a crisis negotiator. He's on a couple podcasts too. It's very interesting. I think it was like one of the money talks. He was doing a brief podcast about how to negotiate your better salary when you're starting. So some good ones in there. Have some other resource links here. The private board here and the code to join the admin of code. I have a link to my Python course and the course that I built my Python course off of. And this is more, if you need to brush up on core, a language of Python, this is probably a good, fast intro to that. Yeah, let's do some coding then. Go ahead and show my my Python course real quick. So what did I do? Let me turn on the mirroring. Okay, so one of my goals with this course was to make it as simple as possible. So there's no fancy list comprehensions or anything like that in this, but all of this stuff is also, there's editors where you can run the code in line without installing anything. So if you need to brush up on basic Python data structures, how modules work, control flow, this is a good starting point. I also have in the wrap-up that Bite of Python course has a little bit more of the details if you go into like list comprehensions and stuff in here. Probably in data structures. We'll get into some of that. Anyway, there's some resources for those looking to brush up some like basic Python. How many people here have done admin and code before? Okay. How many people have done like programming challenges? Okay. Basically the same people. All right. So we're gonna do one. So if you don't have a GitHub, that's how I suggest you start with this. So you can log in, admin a code, find a number of ways, but it's good if you have the GitHub because then when you're sharing solutions, you can create a repo for that, and then we can see what people are doing that way. So I have mine here, and if you were on the leaderboard for this, you'd be able to click on my name, and it would take you to my GitHub account where you could look at some of my solutions from the past years or wherever. But we're going to go back to 2018, and we're just going to do problem number 1. So basically each year you get 50 stars, and since each problem is 2 stars, you have the part 1 and part 2, you get 1 star per. And there's leaderboards for completing it in like the time period, but they release it at midnight, so I just try to get the stars. I don't worry about the points, but some people would potentially get more into it than I am. Okay, so anyway, after this point, it says, after feeling like you're falling for a few minutes, you look up, a tiny screen, error. Device must be calibrated before first use, frequency drift detected. Cannot maintain destination lock. Below the message, the device shows a sequence of changes in frequency, your puzzle input. A value like +6 means the current frequency increases by 6. A value of -3 means the current frequency decreases by 3. For example, if the device displays a frequency change of +1, -2, +3, +1, then starting from the frequency ratio, the following changes would occur. Current frequency of 0 changes +1 to 1, blah, blah, blah. Frequency to 1 changes -1, and so on. In this example, the resulting frequency is 3. So in each one of these problems, you'll get like this sort of explanation of how the problem, what the inputs are, and then you'll get like this example of how stepping through the problem and how the value changes, and then you'll get an example result from this. And here it gives you some more examples and says, here are some more test cases that you could use. And starting with a frequency of 0, what is the resulting frequency after all of these changes? And you have a puzzle input. This puzzle input's a long file of data. So let's solve this problem. going to go to my admin of code directory, and I'm going to use my just run one command here. This brings up an input file that I'll be using. I'll just go ahead and I'll put this value here. And I think the way the input file looked over here is that each one of those is on a separate line. And I'll go ahead and close that. So I've created a little template for myself here to help solve these problems a little faster with some of the imports that I usually would expect to have on these problems. I'm going to go ahead and delete it for now. And so we can just do it without any of that. And then I'll go into the 2018 directory here, and I'll open that in code. We have our, that did not save. So we have our input file here, we have those values, and we want to read those values first. That's our first thing. So system or sys import sys, and I'll also turn off this guy because he's going to be annoying. Sys dot standard in dot read. We're going to just set that to input or data. Oops. So how I normally do this is by piping in the file. So 1.py input, and I have my just command runner set up to do this automatically. So I normally just call it through there, but I can run it like that. So we read the file here, but the next thing we want to do is get those on a separate line. So we're going to split the input by the new line character. Run it again. So you get each one on a separate line there. But then we are going to need to know whether or not our value is positive or negative here. So we're going to get the first character of our each line. So for value in data, or for line, let's use line in data. We're going to, let's see, just print that first, print line. And then we're going to get the symbol or sign, and then we're going to use the star number line. We're going to switch this to sign Do you think int will do it if you have the plus? Yeah. Okay. So then this becomes really easy. You can get rid of this whole for loop. For in data, and then you do an int in, and that's going to give you all the values, but then we want to sum them, right? So we just do the sum of that. And this is our solve, so our out, and out. Out. So part 1 out. So that's that. So now we'll go back here, we'll copy our output file, put it in here, override it, run it again. It says 522. So we'll go back to advent code, hit in here, hit submit. It says that's the right answer. All right, now there's a part 2. We're not going to do that right now, but just give you a taste of what solving advent code problems like. Let's see, how are we on time? So I'm going to talk about some of the So I created another file here, because I want to talk about some of these imports here. So sys gives you access to standard input. You can just use the input command, but input only grabs one line, and if you don't have standard in available, it will throw an error. So you can loop input. Instead of doing this split on new line, you can loop input in a try catch and exit once it hits the try, once it fails out. But I do prefer this to just read, or do like read lines. It gives you a little bit more control over the data set, especially if there's sections that are in advent code that have double split, so they're split into 2 sections. So you have to be like, this is section 1, this is section 2. And then after that, I'm separating them by a single return character. Default dictionary is useful in events where you are counting stuff, or, I mean, you can use like a counter also, which does a similar thing. But if for some reason you are doing something with a dictionary and you don't want to initialize on a key miss, you can use default dictionary. Counter will count all of the recurring incidents. It's a dictionary, but it basically just takes all the items in a list. I can actually show this. So 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you put that into a counter. Let me print that. This is probably not going to show anything useful, but maybe. Oh, it does show something. So, so it gives all the counts. There's a quick way of getting the counts, but it's a kind of weird how you have to access it, because then it's like counts dot most common, and then it's you get this like I think this is an items list or something. List.
Most common.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's the items in there. So you sort of have to say, okay, well, now I want the second item in that tuple to grab the most common count, the number of that count, or the item of that count. So, yeah. Let's see. Dec, or DQ, as I sometimes call it, is it's a queue structure in Python, and it stands for double-ended queue, or it's basically just increases the speed at which you can insert and add to both sides of a list, essentially. But it's great for certain things, like if you need to do depth first search or breadth first search, or anything that needs recursion that you shouldn't be using recursion for, you should be using this for, probably. Iter tools, combinations will give you, if you have a list of items, will give you every combination of that. Let's see, combinations, counts, if you pass it like 2, and you return combo, you'll get an iterator, which is great. But you'll get all the combos by 2s, and then you can increase it by 4 or whatever. But this is great if you have a list of items and you need to compare against like every other item that's in that list. Then you can just use combinations to, instead of writing 2 for loops to iterate the same list, it's just 1 with combos. But you know, it's kind of like you could write 2 for loops. That's why it's sort of when I was talking about the other Python course I wrote, like these are all like just ways of making it a little shorter, a little cleaner to write that code. But knowing the basics of how to write a for loop can solve most of these things. Permutations is the same way. Most often when you have an instance where you have to use this, you're probably, there's probably a more optimal solution, because once you get into using permutations, you're hitting a time complexity issue with a problem. And there's a couple, once you get into like the mid day 10s or whatever, they'll start throwing out these time complexity problems at you. And depending on how you wrote your solution for them, they can be problematic. I'm going to skip these. This one's new, batched for Python 3.12. And it lets you get several items off of a list at the same time, which is pretty cool. And I've already used it numerous times doing some of these problems where I would have had to, instead of using a for loop, use a while loop with an index. Pull them off. Math, self-explanatory. This is the product function. The data classes are great if you need a class. Data class is sort of just a fast way to write a class because you don't have to initialize some of the variables. But if you just use a standard class, that's usually fine too. There's a way of making a data class frozen so you can hash them, which is also useful. But you could just use a tuple or a named tuple, which gives you like a similar result. But data classes is nice for that when you need to write a class quickly or you need to hash some sort of class structure. Cache is a way that a function can return without computing again. So it's basically every time the function is called, it puts that result in a hash table or dictionary with the answer, and if you call it with the same arguments, it'll just return from that table. So this is extremely useful if you have like some recursive function, like a Fibonacci sequence where you have to keep calling Fibonacci, but you have already computed certain values, then you can just keep going. So this is useful in a lot of cases where you don't want to recompute something. Statistics, get the median. This is the regex. RE is the regex library, which is a blessing and a curse when you pull out regex. I've also found that if I have to pull out the regex one, there's often like a different way that you could solve it. So, but there's certain things where like you can solve it with regex. You could solve it with eval and exec, you know, but like be careful if you use those functions. But yeah, there's definitely ways that you can solve problems quickly with that. And their heap queue is great if you need some min heap or max heap sort of stuff. And yeah, that's what I have in my template. Any questions for me or any thoughts?
I have so a lot of people, you know, they'll have an input file that they download because they download it from Adam's code. And what Adam showed was that he would pipe the input file into the Python process with the term types it with the caret, and then to sys stand it in. A lot of people don't do it that way. If you were to look at reference code that other people do, they just run the Python module directly with open file set and then that dot. That's an adequate way to do it. I think what Adam showed was like sort of an advanced way. You know, he and I have been doing coding competitions several years ago. What we found is that streaming the input and having a terminal type the input line by line to the Python process is one way to like, make processing faster for large input rather than loading, you know, a massive, maybe sometimes even a multi-gigabyte file into the Python process at once, rather than opening all of that at once with a zip open and f.read. That's why he was showing the sys.standard in read line as a way to process the input line.
Yep, and I mean, it's totally cool. This is definitely after years of history of doing this. because I think when I was in college, I was doing the streaming in from a file. And then I've got to say Google Code Jam, like it was required to do it that way in several instances. So that's how I do it. But yeah, you can see my just file here. I do it right here. And just as this command runner, it's kind of like make equivalent, and it's KC just on GitHub. Just. Is this it? That's
Yep.
not it.
Yeah.
Looked funny. But yeah, this one's a cool one because you can, like I'm doing here, you can just run bash scripts and they're separated. You can put this on your root file and you can call just from anywhere on your computer. So you can write Python scripts in here. It's a really cool command runner. It's kind of a cool tool to write little things. Like, so I've got this little utility that opens VS Code with the input file, and so I can quickly put the input from admin and code in, and then it creates the file for the day if it doesn't exist, and then it runs it. So just some quick way of doing this, and I've been using these for other things. You can make them specific to projects and stuff, but they're fun, and you can run npm, bash, whatever. So they're a cool way of writing these little command line tools. Yep.
Have you used I forget if it's official or not, but there's an AOC like helper library that, from what I remember, it allows you to like get the input, so they'll just download it for you like, as part of your command. And then the other one I remember is like it submits for you, like you can submit straight from Python. Have you used that at all?
No, I think Alfred tried to do the download.
I have the cookie. I picked a cookie from in the box of these cookies when I hit 12 and development tools, and then I just use I think the requests, and I interact with admin pro using requests, still using a just file. I think it's like it's an easy way. Like I don't. That might be a prefer, but I think that's totally doable by yourself. Yeah, I think that's basically open library. It has a few commands like that, and I think that's exactly how you do it. Is they tell you like where the cookie from, and then set it up with. I think that's people haven't used it before. You might use the helper, and it does those things for you if you just want to get up and going.
Yeah, that'd be interesting but like there's certain instances, see like this one right here, it basically just says your input is, and that's not a file. So there's, yeah, well I'm in my like web thing, but yeah, let's see, I get not a link.
Just it just goes
Yeah.
a lot. Like Alfred was saying, it tells you like the instructions order basically get your cookie from admin code, and that's how you can drag and put stuff like that. It's generated from whatever your template is. And then same with the submissions.
AOC helper. If you find it, post it on the Discord or whatever. Yeah, there's that Reddit page. Also let me find.
There's also AOC lib. I wonder if that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. so he does have a subreddit here. The subreddit is really cool in December. I don't know if I go back and look at this, but there's always a bunch of people doing visualizations of the problems. So it's very cool to see those on the days and like, oh, there's a giant spiral, or like they're doing some sort of cellular automata thing, and it's just like, you know, it's fun to look there. And also another resource if you're having trouble solving the problems and no one else knows how to do it. Yes, Andrew.
You guys might go with I saw somebody the other day posted a website of like all of his solutions, and it was just kind of one thing he mentioned that he really liked doing was he'll start at the beginning of December and then like stretch it out through January. I mean, doing Reddit and checking solution when he couldn't figure something out. And what he mentioned was don't just read through like a really fancy solution, read through one that's kind of dumber or like more straightforward so that he could understand, and then that way he could write his own from that. I thought that was an interesting way to look at it. If you are going to, you know, if you don't have the time to go through an entire problem, especially later you get edited.
One thing I'll say with these problems, I don't use helper classes. I don't have like a helper anything. I write all the code in the editor, and I think it's a good practice to do that. It's like to force yourself to use standard library if you can. So I'm not like using any math libraries or whatever, but so that's my suggestion. I know that Chris, you shared something, and that guy had like a whole helper for his inputs and stuff, and that's fine. I just he had like a import his own module, and his own module had like all this stuff from his like past years. And that's more of like, I feel like at that point you're practicing software development, and a lot of people complained about admin code and challenge problems because they're like, why is that still in the interview process? And it's a very specific thing that we're practicing. You're practicing Python programming, and that is different than software development. A lot of software development is you spend all your time on libraries and integrating stuff together, and this, to me, is a chance to step away from that world and to write code. And one of the things that I really loved when I got into programming was that instant result, the instant feedback that comes with getting a problem right, seeing that thing that says, you got a star, you know? So I do think there's a process, there's an aspect of keeping it simple that is rewarding about this. And even like, I do have like a little helper to do the command line stuff, but even the process of using the command line, of editing the files, like that's all good practice if you're not used to doing that stuff, right? I would recommend, if you're like creating directories or whatever, just do it by hand until it's like so natural that you're like, I know this so well that it doesn't matter if I automated it at that point. Yep.
For another kind, like, I love admin code, but like I really get frustrated because after 10 days or so, like I just hit a cliff, you know? So I want to provide another resource. It's called Python Morsels, which I can hold up here. You can go to the website. But Trey Hunter is a trainer in the Python space, and he has created, I don't even know how many exercises, a ton of exercises. It's a paid-for thing. There might be a free demo or something like that, but it's great because every Monday you get emailed a problem, and you have 3 days to solve it. And then on Thursdays you get emailed several solutions, like essentially as a blog post with 3 different ways you could solve it. And it's a great way to learn, especially the standard library.
That sounds really awesome, because one of the aspects of this is the time pressure thing. Like, it comes out in December, and then like once it leaves December, I'm like, I mean, I did spend this past month doing like lots of these problems, but um, it's a little less of a like, if you make it like a community event where you have a couple people that are doing it with you, then it's like that sort of drive that keeps you going. And even if that's like 5 days, like that's cool. Like if you can get a couple people together and be like, yeah, we worked on this once for 5 days, you know, that's more than like, how often have you practiced Python in the last like year, right? Just sat down and wrote something, right? So, yeah.
Hey, Chris, what was that link again?
Python morsels.
That's not
Yeah.
the Python morsel.
Okay.
He does have a lot of free stuff. I don't know if he has the, I don't know if the programming problem with free, but he has a lot of free content, like, other than that at least.
Nice.
Well, I'm done unless anybody has questions or wants to talk about anything else.
What you gonna do for December coding night?
December coding night, we're going to do admin of code stuff. So, and we'll announce, my plan with the gift cards is to, everyone who has qualified in whatever right now we're going to say 10 days, but maybe I'll change it if the response isn't, you know, if people don't get up there. But from the people that completed a certain amount of days, we'll do a raffle or a selection from that, random selection from those people, and get those people some gift cards. And then we'll go over problems from admin and code in probably the first 10 days or so, and talk about the ones that were challenging or that people had different solutions with. And hopefully some people will share their solutions, and we'll cover that. And yeah, that's the plan. And maybe we'll work on one together. Yep.
Is that December 19th or something? And so for doing the first 10, it would be doing 10 before the 19th?
That's right. Yeah. Obviously, like, I don't always get them done in the same day, and once they get harder, then it's like it takes multiple days sometimes to finish them. But yeah, so but also we'll be on there. We're gonna try to have a spoiler-free discussion for each problem, and then like a spoiler one, so that, you know, people can ask for help and get vague answers to the thing. I don't really want people stuck for several days. That's not really fun. So if we can help them out and point them in the direction of a correct solution, or help them, like, even share code. You can be like, here's my code as it is right now, and maybe you didn't think of some edge case or something. Then we could help you be like, hey, you missed an edge case, and you're like 90% there. Cool.
Ragano, thank you very much. I guess I'm gonna move this board over. Just for the retrospective, I feel if you can come up and like put your stickers on here, or have a neighbor do it or something, that'd be great. What is this? Okay.
Close it, paper off, and put it.
Oh.
I come off.
Good thinking. If you have any thoughts online, I'll still have my phone so I can add to the list.
I can take this thing off, I guess.
I think Brian's muted you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, actually, if you could hold it up for the audience, since I imagine some of us will have. Actually, before I get into retrospective, I just wanted to check. We had a discussion. If we were to have coding nights, as planned, which would be 2 weeks from tonight, and then 12/19, do you guys think you'd come, or is that kind of too busy?
It's 2 days before Thanksgiving.
The first one, 2 weeks from now, is 2 days before Thanksgiving, so it's 2 weeks from tonight. And the other one is 12/19. It's probably the 2 Tuesdays before Christmas. So.
I'll be here, I think I'll be.
All right, cool. Yeah, we don't have to decide now, but at least, let us know if you guys think we should move them. All right, so I'm going to try my best to speak up this way and pause after each one. Everyone, what talk would you give? Yeah, great question.
Put on the spot. We used to have a group of friends where we all had 10-minute comedy stand-up routine. Kind of call each other out. But, like people are at different levels. But like thinking back to what Adam said about giving a talk is a good way to learn something. It's a good way to reinforce what you know. The purpose of talks is not always to show everybody something new. We don't have to go too far into it, but just like as a concept, it would be really cool. Maybe even at one of the, like with the coding night, just as an icebreaker, kind of like work through that one.
Yeah, or a lightning talk night or something like that.
Something like that. Just like again, like what do you kind of have in your back pocket?
No kidding. Oh yeah, Pirate VA lightning talks.
That was, the idea was if we don't have someone lined up, or even if like we wanted to just plan it in the future, in a few months, just have an open sign up for lightning talks and just do that instead of like a full talk. I've seen that, another group, meetup group for, Unity in Boston, they used to do that every few months. They would just do lightning talks for their group. And I thought it was interesting because it would also it might get people started, like someone who wouldn't give a full talk and then maybe they'll give a full talk eventually.
Yeah.
So I thought that would be a good chance for people to get into speaking without having to commit to a full presentation.
Here's hoping this time it'll work.
It's kind of just like practicing a different thing.
Yeah.
Getting comfortable just standing in front of people. And it's interesting because this group is a bunch of people that have a variety of Python experience.
Yeah.
And I struggled a bit with this because I was like, all this mindset stuff, to me, it sometimes feels like common sense. After a while, like you internalize it enough and you go, this is common sense. If I come up and I talk about this in front of people, they're really like, why is it so simple? But maybe it's not, maybe it is, maybe it's not.
Maybe you just have a different way of putting it too, that like it speaks to something, right? Like I think that's a large part of it.
I feel like that's really true of anything you present. Like if you're really comfortable with Python, it's easy to think, oh, this is the basic stuff. And for someone, it might not be. Or like Dakota said, it's also just presenting it differently can get someone to think differently about it, or you're maybe presenting, even someone who has more experience or like a lot of experience, it might be something they haven't seen before. So I say that only to encourage people to talk because it's easy to think like, oh, this is basic stuff when like there are beginners that are here. There are people who might be more intermediate or advanced who may not have seen the thing you're doing. So,
And you may have a different perspective too. Like we all are blinded by what we think we know or what we haven't known yet. Yeah, absolutely. All right, initial presentation and Advent of Code challenge was great. Open to having a 2-part presentation to go with other. I'm lost after that, but it sounds like this 2-part presentation sounded pretty good, kind of a, yeah. Sounds good. A finer point Sharpie for writing would be helpful. Yes. Yeah, indeed. What's that? Not to put too fine a point on it. Profiles on website/Discord. Name, company, interests, add accomplishments, contact info, mentor, stuff like that. That sounds like a pretty cool idea. Yeah, like I don't know what we can do in Discord with regards to profiles, but
You can add notes on the profile. I mean, you could just have a separate
yeah.
like an introductory thing.
Yeah, it's the same in Discord, where it's just they have its full intro, and then you basically just say hello, and then like, I think Discord has threads, right? You can just reply to thread, and then you can quickly scan and see who there is.
Did we have something like that started, or was that on Slack?
not in Discord.
Okay.
Like captures.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, I also think it's interesting that somebody said the website. We're trying to think about what to do with the website and how to make it better. So we might have to spin up a special interest group or something like that for that. Distinction between Python and software development. Do you think you could speak to that, Adam?
Yeah, software development is a different skill set, and the idea of like coding and programming in general is you're dealing a lot with just your code that you're writing and the programming language. But when you're in software development, you're dealing with interfaces that other people made, and you're trying to tie them together with a little bit of code. But most of the time, what you're doing is gluing stuff together with a tiny bit of code that ends up not being really your code. You're just like, I am connecting A to B with a little bit of this. But I am forced to write code in a certain way because of how the inputs and outputs are set. And then I'm forced to test it in a certain way based on the methodology of where I'm working. And there's just a lot of things that you don't control. And you're dealing a lot more with people and with that sort of stuff. So that's why it's just a bunch of different, it's not that programming is not a part of it. It's that programming is this small subset of all the stuff that is involved in software development.
Yeah.
I wrote that. I actually, just for clarification, I wanted to put that as a helpful distinction.
Oh,
I really
okay.
appreciated it because I really have enjoyed coding, and then software development. Although it's great, and I'm looking forward to it. It's more like
that's very soothing and appreciated. And what's like down from side. So then to make that distinction helps me to think like, oh, this is something that I can follow. This is something that I can continue to develop outside of just something.
In software development, there's also like, there's stuff that uses code that's not software development. Like the data science stuff, that's not really software development. It's messing around with data in code. You know, like that's different. You know, there's so many, like code touches everything. So you can, it's literally like the largest thing when you say like, oh, that's programmer, that's data science. I'm like, programming, like I can do that, I can do that, I can do that because I can program. But um, yeah, it's definitely, you can take a software engineering degree. You can take a computer science degree, which is going to be more theory. Like there's a lot of different things that are like, you can apply that coding aspect to. Just be the idea of writing an application, testing an application, and deploying an application.
Nice, yeah. Regarding bullet journal for work, programming journal on paper.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that because like a lot of us have jobs where like you get fired and suddenly you're locked out of your computer, you get laid off and you're locked out of your computer. What did I do? What did I work on? What did I spend my time doing? What did I learn? What did I learn? And how long have I done this? That's all gone. So if you just at the end of the day, just write down a little bit about what you did. Hey, this is the first time I ever used this module. Hey, this is the first time I ever did this. Like you have something that like technically you're still supposed to destroy or surrender when you stop working for your employer. But if you keep it generic enough, if you don't really write specifics, you're probably like doing yourself a solid. That's like not a remarkable departure from, you know, just having paper notes strewn about your office.
It's also been kind of a shutdown ritual for me at the end of the day to be like, I will take and I'll close everything on my computer. And then I'll sort of like write down the things at the end of the day that I want to come back to tomorrow. And that's been nice because then I open my laptop the next day and I'm not like assaulted with all of the things that I didn't finish yesterday.
I will say to do distinctly label your paper journal that's your work journal as a work journal in cases of discovery. Don't write personal things in it. Like don't write anything that you don't want to read out loud in court. But like, I mean, like seriously, just like writing an email, don't write things that you don't want to read in a deposition. And you'll be.
And a personal note, did it drop? No, it's there, okay. I think I got a promotion because I wrote notes like this, where, cause like I would keep track of like everything I did over the course of a year. And then when my boss said, what'd you do this year? I compiled it all into a Word document and gave him 2 pages of bullet lists of these are all the things I accomplished, who I talked to, how I improved other people. And he was literally so gobsmacked, he like, essentially what I said, kind of submitted it verbatim to the people who decided who gets promotions and stuff like that. So if it works for me, hopefully it'll work for you too.
So Chris, can you separate your work from your personal?
I do. In that I have like a journal that's like my kind of reflective, journaling journal, like, kind of more. And so like actually funny, like, cause this is my DjangoCon journal, which doesn't have any work stuff in it yet, but it's going to start within a couple days. But like I do have I will put some personal stuff in here, but it's only like tasks or something like that. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty much,
Yeah, my point is more just don't use your personal journal to keep track of work tasks in the way that I was describing, because in the case of discovery, you would have to surrender your entire personal journal.
Yeah, and don't journal in your work, or don't put a lot of your reflections in your work journal in case you drop it somewhere and somebody picks it up and says, "You think I'm a jerk?"
Don't make it anything private. Make it something that you can fold open to any page.
Exactly.
Don't talk shit about somebody, do that on your own.
Indeed.
It shouldn't be written down.
The more systematic.
Where does recorded video for, can't quite, for something appear? Can you add timestamps?
there was something in particular or a few parts that I really wanted to, just click on. I was just wondering, where does the video appear in?
It will appear on YouTube.
So if you go to YouTube. We haven't like this is the like updating of the script and then and video. Sure.
I was here.
Yeah. But I'll try to get. I usually try to get on. Is that cool?
What are Adam's favorite non-standard library modules?
I don't use anything.
Pretty much. I really like Fast API. And there's a library called Retrying that I like a lot, where you can basically set failure recurrence on a function, where you can say, oh, it will try this 4 times, and if it gets an error more than 4 times, then it will actually throw the error. So it'll do like a try catch, and it will, like, if it gets an exception inside that function, it'll just try it again. And if it does it like 4 times, then that way you just log the exceptions that it's hitting. And if it's something that's like intermittent, like networking thing that like, oh, it just like, or maybe it just like takes a couple seconds extra, then it will just retry it a little bit. So I like that one as well. There's another one that I like for doing timed functions, but I can't remember what that was. There's also another one. What? I don't remember. That doesn't sound familiar. There's a one for Lambda. Alfred, what's that Lambda one that just creates Lambda functions? It's like no, it's the one we used at Stacklet a little bit that we didn't. Chalice. Chalice uses amplified, and you can write an API and it will deploy it on its Lambda functions. And it's a great, like, very stripped it down. If you need a stripped down API and deploy it in AWS real cheap, that's like a great way to get it on there. Just be careful with like fast API and other things. You can actually use globals. You can't really do that with Chalice, but it has great event streams. You can trigger your things with time crons. You can trigger it with API gateway. It's all built in, or you can set up SQS queues and stuff. So it's a great library, Chalice. But if you try to write complicated stuff, it won't really work well. Or if you get really specific with how you deploy things, but it's kind of a nice cheap way to run your own infrastructure.
Nice. Have you heard of Stamina?
No.
It's a opinionated wrapper around retry that adds just some pretty cool stuff.
Okay.
So just thought I'd put that in there. AOC template imports.
That was me. I had a template for the year I did it based on somebody. I really wanted the imports to happen because what it made me think of is if I'm looking at a blank page and I see those imports, it gives me like what data, what algorithms and data structures to think about, like, and apply to the problem. So I really like those imports.
Yeah, so normally how I do it is I'd leave those up there until the very end, and then I clean it up.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, like, those aren't the only ones I ever use, but if I use them like 3 or 4 times in a problem, I put them on my list.
This was super helpful. So thanks, Adam. I also like to quote, ruthlessly cut things from your life. That was, I wanted to note that. Everyone, what talk would you bring a friend to?
I'm just trying to, I was thinking marketing wise, like what would you do if someone was like, hey, there's a talk, you have to come see this, it's gonna be great. What is that talk on anybody's phone?
Yeah.
So, I don't have friends. So, worst case, they should think about what to talk with them.
Yeah. Good idea. I also don't have any non-Python friends, or any Python friends rather, so, except for you guys, of course. But I'd be happy to hear if you guys come up with something. Deliberate practice.
Yeah, that would be good. I really like that concept. I've heard it before, but I haven't more community. I think it's really important to think about because you can, back to like the video game analogy, you're sitting around really tired and just play the same games over and over. Or you just play a favorite song. But deliberate things that we got and getting better at those. That's really important.
Yeah.
There's many years ago, there was a Freakonomics podcast episode directly on deliberate practice, and there's been a number of others. It's basically like it was talking about how like really high performers get that good, and this was essentially what they were talking about.
That's in the Atomic Habits book also, which I will say, not a big fan of listening to books, but that one is rather listenable if you like Audible or whatever. It was not as resource dense that I needed to be able to read it.
Yeah, I think a lot of those that I listed I've listened to, and several of them I've listened to and read. So, but yeah, for me it's just like consume it in whatever way is convenient for you. Like if you have a commute and you you like listening to audiobooks or podcasts, like some people have trouble focusing on those, so like maybe a book is better for you or whatever. But commute has been a good time for me to process that stuff. I've gotten a little bit better about sitting down and reading books, but that's more a recent habit than it used to be.
Word. Baby Cakes in Discord mentioned a fun topic could be creating simple TUIs with Textualize, which I agree. I'm actually very curious about some of this TUI and Textualize stuff. Last one. I agree so hard. For anybody who, I just essentially, if any of you are on the fence about what Adam shared tonight, like, I feel like I'm just giving a +1, right? Because like, I feel as though many people look at me that I'm a Python expert. The last year I spent as a Python coach, having companies pay me to, help their teams. And the reason I'm in such a position is because I practiced. I was able to, learn a lot of good money habits and was able to put money off to the side. So my wife felt good enough for letting me go out on my own and do all this stuff. And honestly, it's like, I feel like I haven't arrived or have like the most amazing life ever, but I really enjoy it. And I feel like, I fully endorse your message and suggest finding your own way through that.
Yeah, and I guess one of the big things that I forgot to even mention is that I didn't work the entire last year at all. And like my wife had some health issues and other things, and it never was like an issue of money. Like it was more of like, what do I want to do? How do I want to steer my ship? In that, like, I tried some stuff and they didn't work, and it's fine. But like, yeah, I don't know. That's life. But having that time, because I figured some of the other stuff out earlier, was very nice. So, yeah.
Rock on.
I had one that just came to me like as we were talking like developing the skills like on the Discord or wherever we want to put it, like members that need project help, and then others. So like me, I'm probably more than a beginner, but far from kind of intermediate. So like if someone needs help, hey, scrape this website for me. Like I don't have time to do that, but like that's a good beginner skill set, something like that. So people can sign up and say, hey, I can help you on that, or it work both ways. Like, hey, I need help.
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of people post looking for help on the Discord.
On the help channel?
Yeah, and and I think Alfred and myself have jumped on pretty consistently if people ask for help, but there just haven't been that many. But if you need specific help with like some obscure library or some like random thing, you're probably not going to get that help. If you need help with deploying to AWS or whatever something, you'll probably get help. But you know, you're only going to get help with the skill set that people have. So you have to be careful to not be like, I can't figure out this error on this thing. And it's like, yeah, maybe don't take your frustrations out on the help channel. But yeah.
Well said.
Could it be like a projects channel? Like, hey, I'm working on this bigger project and people can sign up and they want to do a little this thing here or whatever. So,
Yeah, I don't know if we're ever get that formal, but yeah.
Yeah.
On there.
Yeah, I think part of it's like the Discord is too quiet, so people are afraid to post.
Yeah.
And there's not really like you come here, and I would like more people to stand up here and just talk about whatever, right? Because I think that's a skill to just come up here and talk. Because even like like, what the hell am I going to talk about? Like panicking about it. So like, um, anyone coming out and talking about anything is cool with me. Um, and that's the same for the Discord. Post anything. I don't care if it's Python related. Like it's a Python channel, but this is a community and it's local. So
I think the way channels get made is if something is determined to be off topic enough for the channel that it's getting posted in, like that channel would
right,
come into existence.
and it happens.
And it happens frequently. So like, but like, I don't think we're there yet. So I think, you know, you can consider the main channel as like an everything, nothing. If you just want to talk about like
Movies.
yeah.
I watched the show and I really like it.
Yeah, like we're not gonna, the general channel is not supposed to be strictly Python. It's supposed to be strictly Java.
If activity picks up and maybe notifications and stuff and needed.
Yeah, I mean, if it's bothering people, that's where it becomes, it's frequently enough to bother people. But if there's no posts at all, then
People
like,
think they would have to
doesn't-
mute the channel. Or maybe they should say, we should say something instead of move someone somewhere else, but.
And please feel free to raise these buttons in Discord, even though we're now, so that we can reply to them in Discord, so other people can see it.
Yeah.
And if you're not on Discord,
yeah,
I can send
I
it
heard
up.
a comment from someone, I don't remember, but they didn't want to join the Discord. And I was like, well, you're in a tech group and you don't want to Discord. Like, that's, you know, it seems like maybe you would want to try and get involved a little bit more. But yeah, one of the goals of the Advent Code, besides practicing code, is to try and get a little bit more interaction out of the Discord. So please interact.
Perfect stuff that lead code. And I guess that I just talking about over tracking. Like you want to sort of get stuff that it sort of teaches you. And I'm also wondering Advent code ultimately.
Yeah, so I think with like leak code in particular, you're practicing specific algorithms, like you know kind of what the algorithm is when you go into the problem. So it's great for more of that specific. Like if you are like, oh, I need to do depth first search, and then I go in and I do the depth first search problem and learn that. Advent code adds the added mixture of not telling you what algorithm it is that you're going to have to solve for, and oftentimes it's not a clean algorithm. It's just like a random problem as described. So you normally have a couple steps to get to something, or maybe only that algorithm can be used in part of the problem. But yeah, they're a little bit more cut and dry, some of those leak code stuff, and that's a little bit more boring for me. but they can be useful. I've definitely practiced for interview prep stuff using LeetCode. So yeah, I haven't used Neat Code or whatever.
Yeah, I
I've heard
haven't
of it.
either. I've used other things like, gosh, there are websites that have a bunch of, practice ones. Euler, we did Euler
Yeah.
like a couple of years ago. I haven't done much with that, but I've forgotten so many of them. Like Exorcism is one that I like. It's spelled differently than you think.
And I will say these are useful because I just went through the Capital One hiring process, and the first step that you get is a coding practice, and it's exactly those problems, that type of problem, and there's like 3 of them, and they're not particularly easy, at least for what I was interviewing for. I don't know if they have levels of difficulty in those things, but the code test wasn't a complete joke. I've had code tests that have been complete jokes, but theirs wasn't. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for everyone for coming out. And so 2 weeks we'll be back here again. In December, we're having a talk on Pygame. So come out for that. And then, of course, we'll finish the year with another coding night. I forget his name.
That's interesting.
Does anyone here do Python?
Well, I just know that Pygame had like a significant break in their community because it was like benevolent dictator, but not so benevolent, and then the community split like within the last year-ish.
Pygame is something that I want to be good.
I just use Game Maker.
I use
Game Maker Studio. Yeah, Godot like is another good substitute, depending on just if you're doing 2D or 3D.
it's the Lua one.
Yeah,
I love to
love,
use.
yeah, love is fun too.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And then Unity 3D has had problems with it last month.
Yeah.
I avoid 3D.
Yeah, 3D is
because they're just it's like so much more complicated than what I'm capable of.
I can't think of 3D.
I can't remember his name. I have it on the meetup. What? Yeah, that's it. Britt Holliger, I guess his name. Yeah. Cool.